The dragon egg had cracked at the worst possible moment. Ambassador Varen had been mid-speech, addressing the grand convocation of the draconic sovereignty, when the sound split through the ceremonial hall like a blade through silk. Every elder dragon in the chamber turned their enormous heads toward the containment pedestal at the far end of the room. The pedestal where the egg of High Matriarch Sorval had rested for 3 centuries, carefully guarded, fiercely protected, and absolutely, positively not supposed to hatch for another 40 years. The chamber fell into the kind of silence that precedes catastrophe. Then a small voice said, very clearly, "Oh, he's cute." Every head in the room, scaled, horned, ancient beyond human reckoning, swiveled toward the source of that voice. Lyra, age 6, daughter of the human diplomatic envoy, stood at the edge of the hall where she absolutely was not supposed to be standing. She had a half-eaten biscuit in one hand. Her braids were slightly undone. She was staring at the cracked egg with enormous brown eyes, completely unbothered by the 47 dragons currently staring at her. The hatchling that had emerged was, by any objective draconic standard, terrifying. It was mottled gray-black with streaks of deep crimson, its scales still wet from the shell. Its eyes, when they opened, were the color of a dying star, burning amber edged in silver. Its first instinctive sound had not been a cry. It had been a snarl. A proper, throat-deep snarl that had sent a ripple of unease through even the elder dragons. The hatchling's name, chosen 3 centuries ago by prophecy and matriarch's decree, was Kalen, meaning born in fire and fury. He had lived up to that name in approximately 12 seconds of existence. Kalen snapped at the nearest elder dragon who approached. He scorched the containment pedestal with a burst of immature flame. He spread his wings, thin and veined and trembling, and hissed at the entire room. The grand convocation had taken 3 steps back collectively. Lyra had taken 3 steps forward. "Stop," Ambassador Varen hissed, reaching for his daughter's shoulder. He was too late. "Hi," said Lyra. Kalen froze. No creature, not in 12 seconds of life, not in centuries of ancient draconic memory, had ever walked toward him after the hissing. He stared at the small human child with open, burning eyes. His wings were still spread. His snarl was technically still in progress. Lyra tilted her head. "You have red bits," she observed. "Like my jumper." She looked down at her red cardigan and then back at Kalen. "We match." The snarl faded. Slowly, like a storm cloud losing its conviction. Kalen made a sound that no dragon scholar present had a category for. It was somewhere between a growl and a question. "I know," Lyra said sympathetically, as if she understood perfectly. "Hatching looks really hard. You must be tired." She looked back at her father. "Daddy, he's tired. Can I give him my biscuit?" Ambassador Varen's mouth opened. Closed. He looked at High Elder Marvith, the eldest dragon in the room, whose scales had gone gray with 4,000 years of existence. Marvith looked back at him with an expression that said, very clearly, "Do not stop the child." Yes," the ambassador said weakly. "You can offer it." Lyra turned back to Kalen and held out the biscuit. Plain shortbread. Half-eaten. Thoroughly ordinary. Kalen stared at it. Then he stared at her. Then, with the gravity of a creature who had never eaten anything and had no idea what he was doing, he stretched his neck forward and took it from her hand with extraordinary, almost surgical gentleness. He chewed it once, then twice. Then something in his amber eyes went very still and very soft. Lyra beamed. "See? Biscuits fix everything." She reached out, and before a single dragon in the room could intervene, she placed one small hand on the top of Kalen's wet, scaled head. Lyra," she said. "I'll be your friend." Kalen exhaled. A small, involuntary breath of smoke curled from his nostrils. He leaned, almost imperceptibly, almost helplessly, into her hand. High Elder Marvith made a sound that those present would later describe as extremely undignified for a 4,000-year-old dragon. The formal panic set in about 20 minutes later, once everyone had recovered enough composure to panic properly. The problem, as the convocation's chief scholar Dravoth explained in increasingly urgent tones, was that Kalen had bonded. Dragon bonding was ancient, irreversible, and governed by the deepest instincts of draconic nature. It could not be undone by decree. It could not be undone by law. It could not be undone by anything. The first creature Kalen had accepted, the first being he had taken food from, the first touch he had leaned into, was now, by every principle of draconic magic and biology, his bonded. His bonded was a 6-year-old human girl who thought he was cute and had given him half a shortbread biscuit. The heir to the sovereignty, Dravoth said, staring at Lyra, who was now sitting cross-legged on the floor letting Kaelin sniff her braids, has bonded to a human child. Yes, said Marvith. I can see that. A very small human child. She does appear to be 6. This is unprecedented. Many great things are. Marvith's ancient eyes watched Kaelin, who had curled, there was no other word for it, curled against Lyra's side, his small wings folded, his previous ferocity entirely absent. Look at him, Dravoth. Dravoth looked. Kaelin was making a low, rhythmic sound that took the scholar a moment to identify. He had read about it in texts so old they were mostly legend. It was the draconic equivalent of purring. He hasn't done that since he hatched, Dravoth said quietly. No, Marvith agreed. He is not. Lyra, for her part, was explaining to Kaelin, in very serious tones, the rules of being friends. You have to share, she said, and you can't bite, and if you're angry you say it with words. She paused. Do you have words? Kaelin blinked at her. Then, from somewhere deep in instinct and newly hatched draconic intelligence, he made a sound. It was rough, unpracticed, but it was shaped, unmistakably, like a word. 53 Ra. The silence that followed was the second most profound silence the Grand Convocation Hall had ever held that day. That's me, Lyra said, completely delighted. You said my name? Daddy, he said my name. Ambassador Varen, who had stopped trying to make sense of the situation and simply started documenting it for future historians, looked up. I heard, sweetheart. I'll teach you all the words, Lyra told Kaelin with great authority. It's easy. I'll teach you colors first because colors are fun. That, she pointed at her cardigan, is red. And you have red too. So we're the same. Kaelin looked at her cardigan, then at his own scales. Something moved through his burning amber eyes that the elder dragons recognized at once, because they had felt it themselves long ago, the first staggering comprehension of being understood, of being seen and not found frightening, of being held, not in fear, but in warmth. He was 12 minutes old. He had already found his person. The negotiations that followed were long, complicated, and entirely secondary to what actually mattered. The draconic sovereignty did not return the bond. You could not return a bond. What they did instead, what High Elder Marvith proposed, and the convocation accepted in stunned, unanimous agreement, was extend the human diplomatic delegation's appointment indefinitely. Lyra would grow up with access to the sovereignty's halls. Kaelin would be raised with knowledge of the human world. They would learn, together, the languages of two civilizations that had spent centuries watching each other from careful distance. It was, Marvith told Ambassador Varen privately, possibly the best outcome for peace in 400 years. Your daughter, the Elder Dragon said, walked toward him when every ancient being in this room stepped back. Varen looked across the hall, where Lyra was asleep against Kaelin's side, both of them tucked in the corner, her hand resting on his scales. She's always been like that, he said, never afraid of the wrong things. Marvith was quiet for a long moment. Neither, the Elder Dragon said softly, was he. In every record the sovereignty kept afterward, they noted the same detail. Kaelin, heir to the draconic throne, born in fire and fury, had taken his first breath as a creature of terror, and his second as a creature of peace. The only thing that had changed between those two breaths was one small girl, one half-eaten biscuit, and a word that sounded very much like cute.